Hello and welcome to Behave the Podcast with your host, me, Dr. Tamsin Astor, Chief Habit Scientist, international speaker and author. And today I'm super excited to have my friend, colleague, and all-round badass clarity coach, Kate. Kate, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today on Behave. Woot woot.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Tamsin. You are a rock star.
So I met Kate in a business mastermind, and she and I connected, and then she started reaching out to me and being like, did you know this about yourself? I think this is going to really help you. Oh, I can tell you're having a bad day. And I was like, who is this witchy woman? I want more of her in my life. So tell me a little bit about who you serve, what you do, what kind of behaviors you're interested in supporting, behavior changes, behaviors and mindsets that you like to work with your people, Kate.
So, what I do is definitely strongly intuitive. And the moment I met you, Tamsin, I knew you were really destined to make a difference for a lot of people. So, I use that intuition with people very much so on different levels. So, there's practical level where I'm helping them with wording and content. So, like lately, I've helped someone name their proprietary system and helped another person create a book, and we're developing the contents, and another person, other people, I'm helping them work on testimonials that are really sharing the story of what they do. So there's a words aspect to this, and then there's also a deeper aspect, which is the words don't mean a damn thing if they're not aligned with your life purpose. And so I really feel like I'm out there lassoing people's life purpose and helping them to leave a legacy of light, and specifically solopreneurs who are in business. They've been working at it and they're frustrated. They're just really frustrated and seeking a different solution. So that's who I love to work with. And I work with them in a few different ways. Yeah.
I love it. So I know your background is in like actual like tangible organization, right? You're a professional organizer and productivity coach, and help people like organize their space and their things. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting to me is because you read these things about productivity and getting organized and to-do lists and so on, right? I remember, I think it was Darren Hardy I first heard it from, who I've been following for years, said, you want to touch every piece of paper once. And he said, this is an idea you have for like organizing all the stuff that comes into your house, which, you and I, as busy working moms of three, know there's a lot of stuff that comes into your house that you have no control over, right? I mean, like coming into the house, you have no control over it. It's then what you do with it next. But he then extended this idea to can you touch each of your like to-do list things once, right? So, rather than going, oh, I got this email, I should think about this, being like, okay, I'm going to delete that email, I'm going to reply to that email, or I'm going to, delegate that right now, immediately upon opening, rather than like open it, read about it, think about it, come back to it again the next day, put it on my to-do list the day after, blah, blah, blah. So, one of the things that I would love to like dig in with you a little bit more is this concept of the to-do list and productivity, because I feel like, the world is moving more into a sense of kind of more, I guess, feminine energy, right? And that this sort of like boom, 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 productivity, to-do list, is becoming it's not like we don't have that, but we're moving a little bit, we're softening a little bit about that. So, if you could like get rid of your to-do list, does that help your productivity or not? Like, I'd love to dig into that a little bit, Kate.
Yeah. And actually, I had in my mind this rule, the only handle it once, which is called the Ohio rule, in mind to talk to you about today, because
I live in Ohio. Yay!
no, because it's the very first rule that I would like to burn. I want to burn it up, tear it up, and throw it away. I see, a couple of weeks ago, I worked with someone who had so much paper, and she had such a big backlog that I was going through, and I was fine as long as I was doing alone. But when she came in with me, she got completely stuck because her attachment to this rule of only handling it once was so strong that it was creating this perfectionism within her that was completely inappropriate for the situation that we had. The situation where there was such a backlog, we needed to triage. That's what we did. That's what I did. Triage means quick sort, this is that, this is the other thing,
Right.
and then go through and make the decisions. I am all for decisiveness. Like you
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, decide right in that moment, is this something I want? But the way to do that is actually kind of not in your mind, it's in your
Mhm.
body. So
Mm.
that's one sort of unconventional tip that I would offer to anyone listening is the idea when you see that email, the opportunity, don't think, do I have time for this? All those logical questions. I want you to just take a pause, take a deep breath in, check in with your sacral, check in with your heart chakra. Say,
Mm.
is this something that is pulling my energy forward? Is this something
Mm.
I really am drawn to? And if you're getting a like what do you call it when the heartbeat goes dead?
Oh yeah, flatline, right?
If you're getting a flatline of your energy, or even a repulsion, like a repelling away from it,
Mm.
that's your answer. And
Yeah.
so, much more than listening to this checklist of what you should or shouldn't do with your paper, I
Mm.
want you to tune into that inner knowing, that intuition that is guiding you forward. And then listen to your damn intuition, because when you don't, like, come on, like, this is where
Right.
people get so off track, and really in this big picture of things. The conventional techniques for productivity, they're not appropriate for creative thinkers. So
Right.
creative thinkers are associative thinkers. They may have really cool ways of bringing information together. And so they're not thinking in this linear, sequential.
Right, and that this is the way you have to do it. That was so interesting to me. So, when you helped me reorganize my paper folders before you transitioned into this new branch of your business, I was really so surprised because, my mom had arranged my files for me when I was going through my divorce. And, so for example, banking, she had like 6 different categories for like credit card, debit card, letters from the bank, blah, 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 statements, all these things, right? And you were like, why don't you just have one folder that has all paid bills and put like gas, electric, water, cell phone? And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Because I would like stand there, open my filing cabinet, and then like immediately push it shut again because I was so overwhelmed by the fact that there were like 97 different tabs to choose from. And
Yes.
it is. And it's interesting too, because I think, what you encouraged me to lean into was not only like valuing intuition as a data source that is useful and reliable and important, but then acting on it too. And I think that one of the things that I love about the where we live right now with people like Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle, talking about shame and relearning and smashing the patriarchy and all of those sorts of things that space that we're in, right, is releasing that it has to always go this way, that this is the only way to do it, rather than recognizing that this is the way that it works for me and it may not work for you, and that's fine, right? But that's a valid strategy, right?
Oh, absolutely. And if I don't know if you're familiar with Game of Thrones,
Mm-hmm.
but Daenerys
Mother of
Targaryen,
dragons.
Mother Dragon. So here's what I want you to do, an embodiment exercise right now. Everyone who's listening, hold your hands up, your fists up. Sorry, you just picked up your coffee. Hold your fists up and imagine that you have these constraints, the rules like Ohio, the rules like, I have to file things a certain way, or I have to be in business in this specific way. And imagine that like a rope around your wrists, and now pull it apart with force and say, no, I am who I am. Yes.
Yay,
Yes. Because
freedom.
yes, I am the breaker of productivity, traditional productivity chains. So you get to step into who you are, and it
Mm.
doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. So sometimes I may help people make this shift from the idea that things have to be a certain way
Mhm.
to, I'll say, how lazy can you be? And
Mm.
they're aghast. They're like, what?
That when you said that to me, was like it because it's so interesting because again, we are, particularly as women, we're taught to serve to the point of depletion, right? It's always like serve. And often like the model of like healthy model motherhood is like that you are always putting everybody else's needs first, which is such toxic fucking bullshit, I think. That, we can fall into that role in any way, right? As a nurse, as a doctor, as a business owner, as an employee, that we are always in a space of serving, making it harder, making it more complicated, rather than how lazy can I be? I mean, God, what a fabulous mantra.
Well, I intentionally asked this question because I know it's going to poke at people's underlying beliefs,
Yeah.
right? And so it creates an awareness of, oh, maybe there is a different way to look
Yeah.
at this. Really, what I'm saying is, how few steps can you reduce
And you
this
do.
to?
Right. And that's an interesting piece too. So one of the strategies or energetic lenses that you use, I know, in your coaching, and that I'm learning more about, and actually now that I'm learning a bit more about it, I'm actually in a small group, 3 of us, who are all projectors, and we meet every 2 weeks as entrepreneurs to talk about how we can intentionally create structures that support projectors, which is really fun. So tell me a little bit about human design and how using that really helps people get into their own unique kind of behavior patterns and structures and intuitive downloads in your coaching, Kate.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up because it can make such a huge difference. And when I first found out about human design, I thought, this is bonkers. What is this? I don't really think the planets have much of an effect on us. And then as I was like one of those things that were pestering me, and I just wanted it to go away. And I'm like, I can't, I got more and more and more. As I began to use that in my interactions with my clients, I in myself, I just was amazed. Now I can tell you a story from just a
Yeah.
couple of days ago when I was working with someone who is a manifester, which is a very small part of the population, only like 10%. And the manifestors are the ones who kick everything off. Without them doing their initiation, the rest of us can't do our jobs. Now, this person, often with the manifestors, like they have this kind of repelling energy because they are the initiators. And so if they don't handle themselves truly stepping into their power, they're going to be upsetting people all along. They're going to say, well, people think I have to ask permission and all of this. And that's what this particular entrepreneur had spent her life trying to be, the nice girl who was being polite and asking permission and doing all those things. And it was completely against her design. I said, you get to step into this queen energy where you come in and you say, I do this thing and I think you'd really like it.
Boom.
That boom. And then they'll be like, okay,
Yeah.
right? So this was a revelation to her. So all these struggles that she had had with really stepping into her, saying things directly,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to be small and, just to be nice for people. It was actually completely counterintuitive. And now with the projectors, that human design type is all about waiting for the invitation. And
Right.
so,
And then the bitterness, that's the thing that's so interesting to me as a projector, is that when things don't go wrong is the bitter energy that I feel. And I'm really grateful that I now know that's part of my design, rather than just sort of sinking into it. Is I'm kind of like, oh, there we go again. I'm going into that, like, I'm never gonna find true love. I'm never gonna have it this way. I'm never gonna have the thing that and I'm like, oh yes,
yeah.
there we go. I'm going into bitterness.
And it's so helpful to have maybe some different languaging
Yeah.
around the cues.
Yeah.
And we talk about behavioral cues that set
Right.
us off,
Right.
around some of these thought cues and emotional cues, because probably that bitterness is somewhere in your body. You feel it, maybe in your chest, or I don't know. And it clues us in to when we're not aligned,
Yeah.
which is so helpful because
Right.
then we can begin to interrupt the pattern, right?
Exactly. And then create the kind of lives that we want too. And I think the other thing that's really interesting to me as a projector is with I have the splenic authority, right? So I get these intuitive downloads. about what I should and shouldn't do. And what's really interesting to me is I've bought and sold and moved houses a lot because I've immigrated and moved all over. And I think I've lived in about 10 homes in about 20 years. And with physical spaces, I have that immediate hit. Like I'll walk in and go, yes, or walk in and go, hell no. And it was really funny because I went to college with a girl, and the way she described it was, I could take a dump in this place. She was like, because like she was really tightly wound, and that was her like energetic expression of like, oh, I feel comfortable in this space, you know. But the thing that's really fascinating to me is that I only get it once. And so what's been a big practice for me is learning, when I get giving myself the space to listen into it and value that information in other parts of my life, like business, romance, etc., right, parenting, and then acting on it and creating that cycle of self-trust. Because I think what's so inherent to this whole process is that we lean into ourselves and value ourselves and trust ourselves. And if we're getting these messages to do or not do something and we don't follow it because like society says you shouldn't, like this client you were mentioning, right, of like, I need to ask permission, rather than like, that's not who you are, that's not your nature, you know. That's so fascinating. I love that.
It's really magical. And you know, most of the population there are generators, which do tend to have energy to move forward, and often they have that sacral knowing that I described earlier, where you're moving into or and
Right.
so it can be a really useful way to make decisions.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there's so much there with human design, and I love bringing it in as a tool, bring in lots of things as tools as it's appropriate. I mean, all the things that I've learned become this strategy from the last 16 years as an organizer and a productivity coach, and knowing Myers-Briggs and knowing this thing or that thing or how to market this way. It's all comes together in my brain. I don't know how it works, but you know what? I don't need to know how it works. I
Yeah.
just get to
Know the
serve
stuff.
clients.
Right. So how do you, because I think, you know, like Reiki as well, like all of these things that are energetic, that a lot of people who live in the much more, I don't know, scientific, you know, masculine, whatever you want to call it, kind of world, who are kind of like, I want the tools. Like, give me the tools, give me the numbers, give me the to-do list, give me the stuff, right? Rather than like, your homework is to like listen to yourself, right? Like how, you know, what do you have, like a sort of a like a energy one-on-one descriptor, so that you can help people who are like who are maybe a little leery of it or don't know about it, or kind of like, like, what's the point of this?
Yeah, and I think, there's no reason for me to try to convince someone that something is there or not. That's their experience that matters the most. But I can give an example. Let's say that you are in your office, your home office, and it's cluttered. You've got the pile in the corner with the what I call the calendar graveyard. Yes. Where you've said, oh, I just need to buy a new system. And then you use it for a week or less, and then it goes in the calendar graveyard. And you've got other things that maybe courses you've bought, but you haven't finished, notes from things, to dos here and there, and maybe stuff that doesn't even belong in an office. Now, if you just sit in a chair in that office, whether you know it or not, you're going to feel the energy of the stuff. The
Mm,
stuff is talking to you. The to-dos are talking to you. Every time you look at that calendar graveyard, it's saying, oh, you made mistakes with your buying. Oh, you're such a failure that you can't follow through. Whatever those messages are. And so on a very basic, concrete level, that kind of overwhelm and angst that you might feel in your space is energetic. Everything really, it does vibrate. Even just seriously, if you've got like a big pile under your bed, it's going to have more dust underneath, and the dust is going to affect your lungs. And then, you're like, well, why don't I feel good? So everything is connected, and you can do an experiment where you clear out the things that aren't current for
mm,
your business. Close up loops,
mhm,
decide whether or not you want to do things using that sacral knowing.
mhm.
These are all concrete strategies that you can use, and then begin to notice, what is your experience in that space again? Do you feel energized
Mm,
because your desk is clear? Are you able to focus more because as you've gone through your things, you see the top 5 things that need to be completed?
mm,
So this is the invitation that I want to give, is the idea that rather than hold up a list of how you're supposed to do things
mhm,
by, or we're told, say, by a mentor or um, a, a program that you purchased. Instead, I want you to just use some basic principles of clearing things out and just bringing in what feels right to you. The more you draw into what feels right for you as a creative soul, the more you get curious about how it is that you operate,
and
that's when you can design the system.
right, and then you also create space for other stuff to come in, and I'm always struck by that. Whenever I'm, like, holding on to a relationship or a friendship or a client or anything because of a sense of should, or, like, I need to put in some more work, or I need, and then I release it, I always am like, "Oh, and look, and then that other thing has space to come in." I've created the energetic space to attract the new thing. So that's one of the things as well that I love about doing this work, is creating the space to bring in other things, which I think we forget because we have this idea that we have, that, like, how could a few papers on the desk or a few files on my computer or a few hours a week with something or somebody or some idea really create that much, like, energetic weight, and I think that's a piece that's really fascinating about this. Oh, I love this. This is so juicy. So, one of the questions that I always love to ask my guests is, what is your favorite quotation, and
Mm.
why? Like, what does it bring to you, and when do you turn to it? So tell me what it is, Kate.
Okay, so here it is. This is by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and she
Mm,
says, "All that you are is also seeking you. If you sit still, it will find you. It has been waiting for you for a long time."
mm. She's the
So
one. She wrote all the one about the wolves, right? Is
she
that the
did, yeah, running with, was it not running with wolves? Yeah, it's the wolves thing. I can't remember the title exactly. But this idea that, like, there's a version of you, a
mm,
perfectly unique, accepted, allowed version
mm,
that exists, and it's waiting for you to discover it.
mm.
And all you have to do really is sort of like walk towards it and shed.
Yeah.
Shed this should, shed this should. It's so interesting. I hope you don't mind. Like when we worked on your paper, you're such a magical unicorn in that you just step into your full self, like it's unapologetic, right? And then all of a sudden, here was this area where you were using someone else's rules, and it was so clearly a mismatch, but there was no replacement for it. We know about
Yeah.
habit replacement.
Right.
You don't just drop something. It's usually more effective to bring something else in, but there wasn't a conceptual replacement for that. And so you were holding on to it, almost like wearing that coat, right?
Totally.
And
Totally.
then the weight, I mean, was it a weight that lifted once you're like, wait a second?
Like, why do I need to do it this way? No, totally. And you're right, because that's also the way that I teach people habits, is I say, don't try and get rid of a habit. Replace it with something that you know is easier to do, or is going to serve you better, or feels better in your mind and your body. Because trying to get rid of something that is deeply imprinted is much, much, much harder. And you're actually doing yourself a huge disservice rather than replacing it. So I love that. Oh, that's so juicy. Yay, we need more of that energy in our lives. Okay, so my
Mhm.
next question is, what is a behavior that even though you've worked on it, been coached, had therapy, been supported on, you still struggle with on a day-to-day basis?
Yes, so being more in motion,
Mm,
moving my body. So
mm,
one of the things that I'm learning is this idea of when you're in motion, you're actually moving towards manifestation
mm,
as opposed to stagnant energy. So
mm,
moving my body has been something that have these strange blocks about, and it's been an opportunity to notice some of the things that need to be healed. And
mm,
as I'm healing them, like moving towards this version of myself that's
mm,
been waiting for me to arrive, I'm dropping that layer, healing that layer, and
mm,
becoming. emotionally lighter and hopefully physically lighter. But the idea of you're not sitting and waiting for something,
Yeah. You know,
you're
it's so
moving
interesting
towards it.
you say that because I had my assistant post today in I forget which one of my Facebook groups this quote which of so it's an idea based on this idea of this quote of like work-life balance. And I really don't like the concept of work-life balance because balance means you're not in motion, right?
Mhm.
And I basically think that if you that you know when you walk you're falling, like every step you take you're falling forward. And to evolve as humans, whether we always have to be slightly out of balance so that there's that energetic tension to move, right? So sometimes as a parent the energy is going to be going towards the family because they need you right now. Sometimes it's going to be much towards the business, sometimes it's going to be in one area of the business and less in another area of the business, and that's okay. But it's that imbalance that actually creates movement and evolution. And one of my clients commented on that and she was like, oh, like that feels so freeing to hear, because I'm always feel like as I'm overwhelmed, her kids are little, that I'm like always like doing the like never showing up enough and doing the right thing, you know. And I'm like, no, like that imbalance is what keeps you moving. So I love that you recognize, like that you've articulated that motion is what keeps moving you forward. Yay.
Well, it's also this sort of, I mean, some of the left right brain stuff has been disproven, but it's still there may be some value to thinking about your left brain and right brain combining. When you walk, you're crossing your body.
Right, totally.
So you're integrating.
Yeah, walking is the best thing ever. I committed to walking 1 million steps for Q2, which is so huge. And it's really great having accountability. Like speaking as you and I as coaches, you know, we're in this group and we're posting our steps every day. And so early this morning I walked to a local bakery to get croissants for my kids because I was like, okay, I got to get my steps in. I got to get my steps in early in the morning, which was awesome. All right, so my last question that I love to ask everybody is, if you had a theme song that played when you entered a room and everyone would be like, oh, it's Kate, what would it be?
So say what you want to say, and I don't know what the name of that song is.
Yes.
You posted that
Yeah. Yeah.
and a few months ago, and I actually was
Cerebral.
like,
Yeah.
hot damn, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go for a walk. And I've just played it and replayed it, and I just felt like my soul integrating. And I mean, that's the thing, right? I think the idea of mindset, it just needs to be fucking retired,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's a place for it,
Yeah.
but in and of itself, it's not enough.
Yeah.
You drop into your body. You can have a decision about, say, I'm going to raise my prices, but if your body isn't on board, you're
Yeah.
not going to do anything. You're just going to feel this resistance, and so it's about recognizing that your body's having a reaction and not having to change it, but having the tools to really sit with it and allow it and experiment.
Yeah.
Because when we take action, that's when that reaction comes, and knowing how to interpret the signals of the reaction,
Mm.
not as like, oh, I'm off track, but oh, okay, this is unfamiliar, there's something here, and getting curious about it. I think it's just this is the way that we get to evolve.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That song, it's Brave by Sarah Bareilles. And
Thank
interestingly,
you.
that song was the first that was the first concert I went to. It was like 2 weeks after I separated from my husband. And it was like brave, I can do this. Yeah, so I love that song. Oh, awesome. That's so good. Yeah, and you're so right. There is something about like releasing yourself from the shoulds, right? Which is what all this like, and that's what it is. Like that's what you are as a clarity coach, is helping people dive into, right? Their own unique expression, their energetic expression, all of that. Release exactly.
Breaking the chains,
Break
breaking the chains. Who
game.
put those chains on you?
Right,
Why are you keeping them on yourself?
right.
Be
Release.
the hero of your own life.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So the title of our episode, which I love, is Burn Your To-Do List and Be More Productive. Raw! And I love it. So we're going to have from you a fantastic quiz. How aligned is your time? Right? Which is going
No,
to
well, actually, what I think will be on my website is
okay.
a whole video, a tutorial about how to burn your to-do list with 10 plus practical tips,
Oh my God, I
as
love
well as a juicy little exercise at the end that may or may not involve matches.
it. I love it. Well, I'm super excited. So on the podcast version of this, we will have that link. And we'll also, how's the best way for people to find you, Kate? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Where do
Yeah,
you
so katevarness.com is my website. You can connect with me there, or friend me up on Facebook. I've got a group for powerful light bringers. That's what it's called, powerful light bringers. And I would love to have anyone join me who wants to get some practical tips and some of that juicy, abstract, be who you're meant to be kind of
dragon
information.
energy? Yes.
Yeah, so
Ah,
powerful light bringers on Facebook.
thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning, Kate.
Oh,
I
it's been lovely.
all of your wisdom.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay.